Seguimos en Casa SEAT, canal Economic Zones. Venimos de recabar un montón de información sobre la regionalización económica. Recordad que tenemos colgado toda la información, el contenido que se ha emitido hasta ahora en la pestaña Get Inspired de nuestra plataforma. Estará disponible hasta el día 9 de octubre, el viernes. Espabilaos, si queréis verla. Bueno, seguimos nuestro viaje. Vamos a ocuparnos ahora de una cosa que nos preocupa a todos en nuestros viajes, ¿no? Y estando en casa, claro, también, los servicios. Nos vamos a preguntar cómo apoyarán las zonas económicas el crecimiento de la industria de los servicios en el periodo post-pandemia. Para ello tenemos aquí expertos, cómo no. Empezamos con la moderadora, que nos habla desde Colombia. Ella es Camila Moreno, directora ejecutiva de la Asociación de Zonas Francas de las Américas. Hola, Camila. Buenas tardes.
Muy buenos días para todos.
Buenos días. Y también nos van a acompañar Pierre Sauvé, desde Suiza, José Roberto Víquez, desde Costa Rica, Ignacio Del, desde Uruguay, y Martín Dobat, desde Uruguay también. Pues adelante, cuando quieran, señores y señora experta.
Muchísimas gracias. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. We have this amazing panel about services. And this is very interesting for us because for many years we have heard and we have presented panels regarding special economic zones for manufacturing. And this panel was created exactly to talk about services because it is, as Anna was saying, this is a very special sector on the economy. 3/4 of the GDP of the world GDP on developed countries is made of services, and almost 0.5%, almost 50% of the global GDP for developing countries is made on services. That's why this topic is very relevant for us today. We have Pierre Sauvé from the World Bank, trade specialist and very specialized in services. Thank you for joining today. We have José Víquez, the General Manager of America Free Zone, Special Economic Zone in Costa Rica, specialized in services. We have Ignacio Del, the General Manager of World Trade Center in Uruguay, a free trade zone specialized exclusively on services. And Martín Duarte from Uruguay as well, from Zona America, a very, very important free trade zone of services in Uruguay and Colombia. So thank you very much for all of you to join today and to have this special discussion. So I would like to start with Pierre. Pierre, what are the trade policies you're tackling at the World Bank that will benefit and encourage the service sector as the key players for the recovery of the economies?
Well, thank you, Camila. I think the key word in your question is the word recovery. And we are struggling with a pandemic whose impact on the world economy is unprecedented. We have not seen an economic shock of this magnitude for a very long time. And unlike the financial services crisis of a decade ago, which apart from the financial sector did not have a very strong impact on the rest of the service economy. The service economy was actually quite resilient to the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. This time, of course, in a context of very severe restrictions on human mobility, on travel. These lockdowns have had a very profound impact on the service economy. And so we are struggling, of course, with this issue of how to revive economic activity in the midst of, in many regions of the world, evidence of a second wave of the pandemic, which creates tremendous uncertainty. There are still some silver linings in all this. We see that world trade in goods, in manufacturers, is recovering and is recovering faster than we thought, and was reduced less than we feared. And of course, that is good news for the service economy because there cannot be sustained trade in merchandise products. And this is, of course, of interest to those free zones that combine goods and services. There cannot be a recovery in goods trade without an accompanying set of services that will underpin that recovery. The crisis has shown us that digitization, of course, is a very important source of recovery and of sustained economic activity. That if I am to say if there are any silver linings in an otherwise very bleak year 2020, it's the sort of change in focus that we have towards the immense promise of digitization, digitization that cuts across all sectors of our economies and really makes a difference. But of course, there are limits to digitization. You cannot visit Machu Picchu virtually, or you can, but it's not as satisfactory as being there in person. And there are very important segments of the service economy that require face-to-face interaction that are still going to be severely affected for some time. Affected until, in effect, we have a vaccine that is available and distributed at scale, and therapeutics that are available and distributed at scale. And you imagine the magnitude that that challenge represents. But it's again a challenge that the service economy is going to be central to providing through logistics, through distribution, through transport, through medicine, through medical services and their delivery and so on. So any which way you look at it, the service economy is very central to the process of recovery, even though we are still, because of the uncertain nature of the pandemic, in a zone of uncertainty. And it seems this time around that the service economy is hit a bit harder than the goods trade industry. Now, from a special economic zone perspective, this may not be so bleak. Why? Because special economic zones tend to focus very much on the cutting edge services that can be delivered remotely. Digitization is typically at the heart of what free zones offer in services. And so that is the component of the service industry that perhaps has been least affected by the crisis and perhaps offers the greatest prospects for early recovery in areas such as online payments, telemedicine, online education, and so on. So in a way, the very profound changes that this new normal imposes on us raises also significant opportunities in the services area that free zones appear to be able to address. Let me stop there.
Thank you very much, Pierre. And you pointed out something very, very important, which is digitalization. And we are with Martín Duat from Zona America, as I mentioned, in Uruguay. And Uruguay is one of the countries that has had a little bit less effect on COVID over the economy, thanks for the digitalization process you're facing. So Martín, I want to ask you, tell us about the process of the transformation you're facing on Zona America. And I heard that you signed an agreement with the school, Holberton School. Tell us more about this initiative and how Zona America transformed in this digital process.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit further back in history, if you allow me, Maria Camila, which is basically, free trade zones or special economic zones. What we typically have in common across the globe is more oriented towards industrial or logistics in terms of the typical use of a free trade zone, and that was the case for us as Zona America, as a private free zone operator here in Montevideo, Uruguay, and the first component that was developed in this campus was very targeted towards infrastructure and strategic location for those kinds of industries, for logistics and industry. But then, also in order to be a strategic node in international supply chains, it is important to have special trade agreements between either trading blocks or between different countries. And in that sense, Mercosur, which was founded in 1990, in 1992 actually, passed a decree in 1994, which basically banned or took out a lot of competitiveness from the Uruguayan free trade zones to industrialize products for the region. That implied a huge challenge back then, and so free zones needed to reinvent themselves. Vacancy was high, and so entrepreneurship was definitely needed. Creativity was needed to develop new business. In that sense, the law, the free zone law of Uruguay, was a pioneer, I believe, in a global scale, in realizing and identifying in the late 80s that the service industry would be one of the key industries to foster development and job creation and develop our economies and our workforce. And so by then the law already included special benefits for the free zones, which definitely were took advantage of once the industry was out of the value proposition. And in that sense, the industry sector the service sector works by different rules than logistics or industrial. And one of them is the talent. Montevideo is a capital city. We are based in Montevideo, and there was an interesting talent with adequate capabilities in terms of languages and in terms of background, which is definitely key for the industry, for the services industry. And also Uruguay, is a country very open to immigration. So also the free zone law is very attractive towards attracting expats. Another key aspect for the services industry that was also put in the value proposition is the strategic location. And for the services industry, the strategic location is not the same as saying, oh, we are close by to a port or we are close by to a railroad. It is saying we are close by to talent, and it is saying we are close by to an international airport with good international connectivity. And also, it's also seen in terms of time zones. So the good thing about the Uruguay and the Southern Cone is that we are in the same time zone as Northern South America, or in a very comparable, or in an adequate time zone in relation to Europe. We are only 4 hours or 3 hours in difference. So that allows also to provide services from South America to these markets without the hassle of what the flagship of the services industry, which is India, has this issue. And so from then it was about generating the ecosystem. So once you have the adequate law that provides the benefits for the companies, and you have the talent, and you have the strategic location, it's about bringing in the customers, global companies providing services, or third part or BPOs doing outsourced services for other companies. And in that sense, it was about generating the ecosystem, which is related as free zone developers to developing the office buildings, or adequating our free zone more pedestrian friendly, and ensuring that we have the adequate public transportation and all the services that this population that nowadays at Zona America in Uruguay, which is about 7,500 people working here every day pre-pandemic, hopefully coming back soon. It's about generating this ecosystem. Yeah. So I'll cut there now, but it's definitely been a journey, and we're looking forward to what's coming.
Thank you, Martin. I will bring back again the question for the digitalization on the second round, but it was very important what you tell us of how a country that had manufacturing special economic zones, which are the ones that we commonly know, how they transform into services. And I want to highlight something very interesting from Uruguay, is that with 13 free trade zones in the country, they generate 5% of the GDP of the country. It's very important for the economy. And we also have Jose from Costa Rica, which is also a very important sector in Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, 8% of the GDP of the country is generated on the free trade zones. 6 out of 10 new formal employments are made in the free trade zones. Well, and you have almost 58% of the companies installed in the free trade zones are from the service sector. So, Jose, tell us which are the opportunities that present the free trade zone services for the development of your country, and again, as I asked Pierre, how the services sector are going to help for the economic recovery.
Hello, Maria Camila. Thank you very much for having me. First of all, thank you very much to the organizers of Barcelona New Economy Week. This is a very important discussion to bring to the table, and it is an honor to be here with the audience and sharing with my fellow panelists. I will start off with a brief introduction of how Costa Rica began in free trade zones. This started all 40 years ago when the country decided to change its economic model. At that point, we wanted to diversify our exports because we were a small country in Central America that was exporting only a few agricultural products. You can see today that we are exporting thousands of products to almost 150 countries. So you can see how the model has proven to be successful. The purpose here was to attract foreign direct investment, create employment, and also open to international markets. And this has been accomplished. And I will just give you a couple of data points. Right now, in the economic zones regime, we have 120,000 jobs. And even though we only have 0.6% of the companies in the country, that accounts for 12% of the employment in the private sector, and that is 7% for the entire employment in the country. So for a country that has a population of 5 million people, you can imagine how 120,000 jobs are a large portion of its employment. During the last 5 years, as you said earlier, 1 out of 3 formal jobs created in the country came from free zones. And that is, like Pierre mentioned before, because we're working on cutting edge technology where technology companies that are growing across the globe decide to come to Costa Rica because we have the right variables. We have our human capital, we have a right position in the geography of Latin America, and we have been able to deliver and even evolve in the chain of services that we provide. If you look at the employment growth in free zones, the numbers show that it is 9.9% versus only 1% in the rest of the local economy. So you can see how we are the engine that right now is growing and presenting opportunities for the private sector to grow in Costa Rica. There is also a misconception that in order to access a job in the free zone regime, you need to have a formal university degree. And what we see in Costa Rica is that only 50% of the employees have a formal university degree, which means that this is a very inclusive regime where people come from backgrounds in, let's say, technical and vocational training. They have taken bootcamp certifications, and they are able to insert themselves in the job and continue training in skills such as cybersecurity, machine learning, shared services operations, and so on. So it's an inclusive system that is allowing people without formal education to be able to insert themselves into the private jobs. Another large opportunity here is that when these companies establish their operations in the country, they're also hiring services from local suppliers. So they are creating 60,000 indirect jobs, and that is 4,000 small, medium enterprises that are providing their services and their products to the transnational companies that are setting up operations in the country. Apart from that, the transnational companies in the economic zones also pay for what we call the Social Security Fund, and that is the public health system. So they account for $500 million yearly, and that is for public system that is used in the nation. Also, they pay for the National Learning Institute, and that is $32 million annually that we use to educate people in the careers that these companies themselves are trying to grow in the country. And finally, we have seen how some countries are evolving and taking these economic zones into innovation districts. And they are able to include incubators, venture capital, universities, and they are innovating and creating, doing research and development, and at the same time launching new products into market. And we see that this is the intersection between academia and the private sector. As a conclusion, we see that for every dollar of tax exempted in Costa Rica, there is a return for the country of $2.5. And I will leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose. You gave us a broad explanation of the impact of the free trade zones in Costa Rica, and we definitely believe that the special economic zones, and well, in this panel, the special economic zones on services are going to play a key role on the economic recovery. 180,000 employees in total, counting the direct and indirect. It's a huge number for, as you mentioned, a population of only 5 million people. So thank you very much. And I want to go to Ignacio. Ignacio is the general manager of a World Trade Center, which is a free trade zone by itself, dedicated to services. And you faced a big challenge when the pandemic started, because everything was inside the free trade zone. And then from one day to another, they tell you, okay, you have to do home office. So tell us about all the trade barriers that you faced at the beginning of the pandemic, how you reinvented, and how you managed with the telework and the free trade zone regime.
Okay, thank you, Camila, for the question. And it's an honor being part of this panel, and thanks for the organization. As you said, we faced a lot of barriers at the beginning. Like the whole world, we need to face something that we didn't know what it was and how it works. And the main barrier, as you said, since we are a services-free zone, we deal with people, and our legislation says that we need the services that the companies provide needs to be performed within the free zone. So the first policy barrier was we need to have a legislation that allows companies that work from home. The good news was the government act really fast in order to put in place an exception that allows companies that they need to work from home, and we are still on that regime. Since the pandemic, it's very well managed in Uruguay, but it's not over. So we are still on that exception, and I think that it's a really good way to manage that. On the other hand, we as a company, as a free zone, we need to put in place a lot of systems. Basically, we need speed in order to perform that thing, in order to prevent all the health implications of the pandemic. So we need to act really fast. We need to put in place a lot of protocols. So we perform an emergency committee with our staff in order to set up these protocols. And on the other hand, the other thing that we need to face is a great volume of requests from our customers, because we have all our customers at the same time asking for questions or permissions in order to work from home, but also they need to have their own stuff. They need the computers, or in some cases they need the chairs in order to work from home in a good way. So these three things, speed, protocols, and a big volume, would be the main barriers that we need to address during that situation. In terms of the future plans of this regime of working from home, we are working very close with the government. Here in Uruguay, I think we have two main advantages. First of all is our size. We are only 3 million people within the country. So as a joke, everybody says, okay, you're only 3 million, you are all cousins in Uruguay. And this is part of the secret. We have a great relationship between all the developers of the different free zone, like Martin. So we made a quick communication between us and to set up and to align the key measures that we need to take in order to address the things. The other key role was the Chamber of the Free Zones of Uruguay. So we managed as a team this situation. we are working now in order to make this new reality with the current and the right processes in order to manage that. I think that the secret is to have a broader view of this situation. We have, first of all, and the most important one, all the health issues. So we need to address that in terms of the protocols. But we need to look also the people, of course, and the employees, allowing them to work from home in certain periods. But we also need to look at the investor side, because working from home now is a reality, but which would be the specific characteristics that you need to address in this new working from home basis? You need to provide the internet, you need to provide the electricity, and what about all the perks that you have as a company? So we need to take care of that situation, to look in a very deeper way from both sides, from employees, but also for investors. And having that situation, I think we would have to success dealing with that. On the other hand, I think that a main challenge would be trying to understand the different situation that we would face with the different customers. For example, the IT companies now they are having, most of them, a great time because the business is growing and new opportunities are coming. On the other hand, you have certain businesses that are in not such a good way. For example, we have a customer that makes stands for the events. So since most of the events within the world became online events, their work has been reduced in a significant way. So we need to have a specific, a tailor-made plan for any one of them, working really close in order to understand the reality and see the best way that we can add value for them. And I think maybe I'm done with that. So thank you.
Yeah, and I will go back to you to ask you about all these changes that needs to be done within the structuring of the companies. But you mentioned something extremely important for the rest of the economies that have free trade zone, and is the word flexibility. Sometimes the regime for free trade zones, it's very strict. And after this pandemic, we realized that we need fast answers. We need to work with the government together for flexibility. So I really hope that after this pandemic and with the economic recovery that we all need, the governments understand that we need more flexibility on the regime. So thank you very much for pointing out that. And Pierre, I want to go to you now. As we have all noted, the free trade zones are playing a very important role on the economic recovery, and there has been an increase on the number of free trade zones. So my question is, in your view, what changes in the world economy lie behind the rising number of free trade zones, specifically targeting the services sector? And what are the most important factors contributing to their success?
Well, thanks, Camila. That's an excellent question. I think, we are more familiar, historically, we've been more familiar with free zones that were really geared towards the manufacturing sector, as Martin observed. The phenomenon of free zones specifically targeting service sector output is a relatively recent phenomenon, about which, even at the World Bank, relatively little is known empirically. This is an area in which we aim to devote much more analytical attention in the years to come. But of course, the arrival of the emergence of free zones and services is not indifferent, is not a coincidence. It's completely rooted in very profound structural changes in the world economy that are making every economy, essentially at any level of development, more service-centric over time. And that greater emphasis on services is rooted in a host of factors. Of course, technology plays a very profound role, but rising incomes, demographic change, the fact that population is aging and creates needs for all sorts of new services, urbanization, which is a very important factor. Many of you have noted how special economic zones, they don't occur just anywhere geographically. They tend to occur where there is a cluster of talent and economic activity. So geography plays a very big role, and the world is becoming much more urban all around. So any which way you look at it, the share of services in almost any economic aggregate, whether it's output, employment, trade, investment, the use of bandwidth, is rising. And therefore, there's a very strong demand for harnessing this structural change and to try to create spheres of economic activity that try to respond to the growth of the service economy. And of course, free zones are one response to that. I think it was Martin, but all of you emphasized the sort of what are the core determinants of a competitive free zone in services, and indeed of competitiveness in services more broadly. And you know, these are areas in which the World Bank tries to direct much of its assistance to countries who want to diversify into services. Pay attention to human capital. You know, services are knowledge-intensive activities for the most part, especially those that are central to free zones. Pay attention to the characteristics of services. Services are interesting relative to goods. They are relatively indifferent to location and to time, to distance. They can operate at a much smaller scale. Therefore, they require less capital. They rely far more on supply of talent and human capital. So paying attention to those parameters of policy that matter, which cuts across, you know, migration policy, openness to talent, openness to the mobility of talented people, providing quality of life environments, mostly in cities, because that's where free zones will tend to be, with all sorts of quality of life, academic, vocational training facilities. These are the really important parameters, I think, that countries' policies can play a role in nurturing the kind of supply response that you need to provide the economy with the capacity to harness the potential of the service sector. Many free zones have been initially sort of export-oriented, somehow a firewall between the free zone and the domestic economy, but we see that changing as well in many economies. And so free zone activity now operates both on the export side and in the domestic economy under specific conditions that, of course, have to be properly regulated. And what is also interesting is that we see now free zones that are being used as experiments in regulation. The service economy typically is highly regulated, and countries need to experiment with regulatory change to see how it can spur innovation and growth in the sector. And free zones are a very useful laboratory in which to experiment with change, and if the change seems to be working well, to scale that change at a national level. So we see a multiplicity of experiments going on in the world, focusing very centrally on services within free zones. And this is a very interesting development.
Thank you, Pierre. Yeah, amazing. Many things that you mentioned, and I'm really going to quote you from now on in my presentations, the cluster of talent, because we always talk about the cluster, talking about manufacturing and global value chains and regional value chains, but we never talk about a cluster of talent. And Zona America, so I'm going to go back to Martin. Zona America has a really important campus, and it's a cluster of talent. So Martin, tell us about all the digital process we're facing and the agreement you have right now with the different universities and the one from the Halbert School.
Yes, absolutely, Camila. It's definitely the path going forward, and it's been the path quite a while now. When you get into services, the concept of cluster of talent is key, and I'm going to refer this as our experience going international. We've been in business for 30 years here in Montevideo, Uruguay. We are the first private free zone in Uruguay, but in 2018 we opened and inaugurated in your country, Camila, in Cali, Colombia, a new free zone targeted towards services. And so, in order to do the site selection and analyze the investment, and obviously seek for a partner, a local partner, and all of that process, which definitely took a while and a lot of analysis, it was the concept of cluster of talent was one of the main concepts. And actually, we based our new campus in Colombia within 5 minutes of 8 university campuses. So that's in some way, it was definitely one of the key things of the value proposition. And whenever an international company, a strong employer, a tech company wants to look at our business park in order to base themselves and do services from our free trade zone in Colombia, what we do, actually, we do a roadshow, and we show them the universities, and we show them the students, and we show them the projects they're working on. So then and that's definitely highly valued nowadays by services companies in order to seek for talent. But but then surprisingly, that's not enough. And I want to tell you a little bit about Holberton School. So being within the university cluster, or being within a city that has sufficient talent and adequate access to talent, it was definitely not enough because of the process of digital transformation. What we're dealing right now is that, just to give you an image, JP Morgan, and they are not within our free zone, but just to tell you about international trends, the 50% of the new employees that JP Morgan will be hiring in the next years will be technology people. They won't be bankers, or they won't be financial students. They will be technology people. So in that sense, we're dealing with a situation in which the world has more demand than supply of all the technology careers, software development and software engineers and all of that. And so one other aspect which is very interesting about this industry, or this, it's independent of whether we're talking about an industrial process, or a logistics company, or a bank, or a tech company. The digital transformation has come for everyone, and it has accelerated with this pandemic for sure. And so the key thing is about that the cluster of talent has enough supply of tech professionals, And one aspect about this is that they don't necessarily, the companies, the employers, don't necessarily seek for a university diploma for these kinds of professionals. And that's where this new industry that is growing a lot, which is EdTech, comes in, So is all of these online courses, or online platforms, or hybrid campuses that work on platforms, and peer-to-peer learning, and these huge combinations, and lot of venture capital is going towards this industry because it's gaining a lot of traction. So we have developed a partnership with Holberton School, which is one of these EdTech providers of software developers, and they are based at our campuses in Colombia and in Uruguay. And it's a great value proposition that now the companies within the free zone value a lot, but the economy as a whole, because the students will be working wherever they will be working. But definitely, it's about strengthening this talent cluster, and the value proposition of Holberton, just to tell you a little bit more, is to provide full stack developers within 9 months to do. It's a full-time student. So they can't work and study within those 9 months, but then they can do an internship. They can do specialization in either machine learning or augmented reality, or this new one of these new technologies that is being adopted very strongly. And these are the kinds of professionals that we're seeing the demand spike. and that this offer, among many other offers, because I'm sure every country has many offers of this kind, or even students can find them internationally online, but we couldn't be away from this trend, and we think that it's being on the right path from the feedback that we're receiving from employers.
For sure, and congratulations about everything that you're telling us, and with these technology people that you mentioned, for sure, people will upgrade their skills, and it's something that we definitely need in our Latin American economies, to skill more people, to give better employment. So it's a very successful case, and I know that Jose, in Costa Rica, he's also doing a lot of projects on digital economy on the free trade zone. So tell us, Jose, about the future projects of America Free Zone.
Sure, Camila. And before going to that question, I would like to give you just a quick fact about how important economic zones are in Costa Rica right now. Even during the pandemic, 10,000 jobs were created, and 98% of the companies were able to continue operations in the services sector. So that tells you a lot, not only about a sector that is able to sustain operations, but also grow in a time when there is a global pandemic and the industries are contracting, right? Now I will move on into the projects in AFC, and I will tell you a little bit about our evolution and our history throughout the years. So the project started 20 years ago. It was actually my father who was doing his MBA, and he did a thesis where he studied about this trend of transnational companies that were coming into the country. At that point in time, the companies were manufacturing. So the type of buildings that you would see back then were warehouses, and it was very different from the free trade zone that America Free Zone is today. And what happened in 2006 was that Hewlett Packard was the first company to establish operations in customer support. So that was moving forward into creating more value added activities. And then, as companies began to trust the human capital in Costa Rica and realized that we had soft skills, bilingual capabilities, and even some technical backgrounds, they decided to bring shared service operations, which, as we have said before, include things like payroll, accounting, finance, design, software development. And now what we're seeing is a trend where companies are bringing cybersecurity centers, they are bringing their artificial intelligence assistants, they are developing that from Costa Rica. So we have seen an evolution in the types of jobs that we have received, going all the way from manufacturing to machine learning and cybersecurity. And what comes in the future for America Free Zone, we would like to see ourselves as a smart business campus that is aligned with United Nations Sustainable Goals. So I will list a couple of sustainable goals and the projects that we have right now. So number 7, affordable and clean energy, and 13, climate action. Right now we have a carbon neutral operation. And we believe that is very important because we take into account the different stakeholders of the economic zones, not only ourselves or the companies that are established in our free zone, but also different stakeholders, including the community and the environment. So we have more than 2,000 solar panels for renewable energy that we use in our common areas, in our hallways, in our elevators. And I think that's very important because Costa Rica brand in the world has been one of sustainability and taking care of our environment. So it's continuing with our roots and values in that sense. We also take care of waste management with a compost process that takes organic materials and transforms that into fertilizer, so that we make sure that water is treated properly, waste is treated properly. We also have some large recycling campaigns where everybody in the park brings the recycling bottles from their homes, and we're able to recycle tons of plastic. So these are just some examples of how we have been able to reduce our CO2 footprint. So we can see how we are able to operate and grow at the same time that we take care of our environment. And also considering transportation methods such as carpooling or electric shuttles, for example.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, sorry. So sustainability is definitely one of the most important figures that we're tackling right now in the free trade zones. And well, I'm very happy to hear that you're paying close attention to the SDGs, because we need to be example around the world. So I'm going to go last to Ignacio because the time is running. Ignacio, what are the new skills that the companies are needing within your free trade zone of the people? What are the talent skills that you're facing, that you're needing?
I think we have three main things that I want to highlight regarding skills. The first thing is a trend that was before the pandemic, that was we have a shift in terms of IT that already my fellow panelists talk about it. So we have seen a big interest in terms of IT. So it's a must. I think that the new kids would have as a curricular things like IT, how to develop software and that stuff. The second thing is that the pandemic has brought a new thing, that is we need to have a shift to the soft skills. I think the pandemic have demonstrated how important the soft skills are. So all of us need to deal now with change management, as you said, to flexibility, and how we need to build great teams in order to perform our work. It accelerates the teams all over the world working together through internet, through the different technologies. So we have seen a shift through that soft skills. And I think this is the most important thing to mention, because nowadays all the technical skills you can have it through Coursera or through a lot of platforms that gives you the content for free. So I think the main challenge is how to deal with all the big amount of opportunities in terms of skills that technical skills that you could have, and the secret would be how you manage that, how you embrace it, and how you perform it in a day-to-day basis within your job with that skills. So again, soft skills for me is the main secret. And the other thing that I consider important, but is specifically for Uruguay, as I said, we are on the side of the winners regarding COVID. We are now seeking for new cultures. It was something that the free trade zone regime in Uruguay encouraged all the time, to have people from all over the world. But nowadays, since we are like not free COVID, but we are COVID friendly. So we are offering the companies and the people from all over the world to come to Uruguay, have great quality of life, have a free state with a lot of opportunities and possibilities regarding people of different cultures, find in Uruguay a great place to develop, to work, and to have a great quality of life. So I would say that these three things are the most important ones.
Well, I've heard many definitions for COVID, but I'm really surprised with this COVID friendly, which makes a lot of sense. So thank you very much to all of you. I'm just going to take some bullet points for the takeaways for everyone that is watching today. First, flexibility. Second, services definitely will play an important role on economic recovery. Third, cluster of talent. Fourth, tech people. Fifth, sustainability and the accomplishment of SDGs. Sixth, soft skills. And seventh, openness, COVID friendly. So thank you very much. I would love to stay and take more time with you, but our time is over. So thank you very much to join us today, and thank you very much to the audience. And any question, just feel free to contact us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Muchísimas gracias. Gracias a todos. Gracias a José Roberto, Pierre, Ignacio, Martín y Camila por estar ahí. Una cosita, Martín, te has quedado un momentico colgado, la imagen se ha colgado, pero no te preocupes, porque tenemos una plataforma tan innovadora y tan potente que solo te saca el mejor perfil, de verdad, no te preocupes. Nos vemos. Muchísimas gracias por vuestra intervención. Ha sido un placer. Y vosotros, asistentes, que ya sois más de 10.000, os conectamos ahora con Estación de Francia para una charla inspiradora, la segunda del día. En esta ocasión hablará Cecilia Tam. Que disfrutéis mucho. Nos vemos de nuevo aquí en Economic Zones después de la charla inspiradora. Gracias.